Hey everyone. It's a cold day today, but I went out and did a little shooting with the bow today. Got to stay practiced up. Lost an arrow. Couldn't find it. I don't know where it went, but wherever it is, it'll show up sometime. Probably buried in the snow. Anyway, arrows aren't that expensive. So let's get into this thing. Looks like we got a bunch of people here. Tim, Charles, Abe. See you made it home from school yesterday. Theodore, we got a bunch of guys. I'm going to wait a few minutes here, burn a little time. Let a few guys more come on if they want to come on. Everybody enjoying the cold weather? Hey, Andy. Tim? Okay, we're not going to wait too much longer. We're going to get rolling here pretty quick. So, you guys, I think you probably saw the map I put up on the Facebook page there. That's what we're going to be looking at. It's a fictitious. It's something I made up. It's something that I didn't really want to show an actual buck. I didn't want to have to hide all the details and mark everything up and all that. So this is just a rendering of what I would believe a deer would do, and we're using it as a tutorial. So I left all the information on there. So if you guys want to scout around long and hard enough, you'll find it. It's in Wisconsin somewhere. So I just randomly kind of bounced around on the map and grabbed some photos. So anyway, we're gonna get going here. I don't know if you guys can take me serious with an arrow sticking through my head, so I better get rid of this thing. Anyway, hey Dave. People ask me a lot. You're a tracker, so what do you do when there ain't no snow? Well, that's a very good question. And so we'll try to cover it today. I'll try to give you guys a little window into peek as to what I do, how I approach it. And if you guys have questions, anytime you got questions, go ahead and fire them up. If you got comments, go ahead and make those comments too. And we'll try to, kick this thing around a little bit, and we'll see how it goes. So anyway, what the map that I got, and I'm going to switch over to that here now so you guys can look at that. But the map is a pretend map of a deer track, and you'll see the red line represents a deer track. The circles are pretend rubs I found along the way, and X marks where I found them bedding. And I'm just going to kind of take it from there. So I'm going to switch around here and put the camera on that map, and we'll go from there. Okay, again, this is like the pretend trail of a buck I followed. It's kind of typical of a buck where I would expect him to go, following along edges. He'll come along the swamp edge here. They like to follow edges, and as you see, I marked a couple spots here where I would think there might be some rubs and so forth. And then he crossed this beaver dam here. That's something they do an awful lot. That's a really hot spot to hunt. If you're out scouting, you find beaver dams, you really check those out. Really look them over for tracks and everything. That's a really hot spot for deer. It's just like a bridge for us. Very good place to sit. If you just need to post up somewhere or whatever, it's never a bad idea to post up. If you check the ground around there, it's usually soft because it's around a creek. You can look for big tracks as well. That's a really good indication. Rubs or any indication that a decent buck is crossing there. And he made his way back up into here, and kind of typical of the ways these deer, right off of a point, somewhere like on a little dead end spot where nothing's going to bother him too much, he's bedded down. Okay, now this would be a fictitious track that I took in 1 year, and then, okay, now the next year rolls around. I don't have any snow to work with. I got all the woods. Where am I going to hunt? Well, these are the first places I always key off of. I'll go back to these routes. They run them every year. And by the way, I want to point out too, most of my hunting is done during the rut. And a lot of these routes that these deer are running are going to be what I would call a rut route. They may not even live in this area during the late summer, early fall when you first start hunting. They may be here, they may not be. They may move into this area for the rut and then move back out for the winter again. So you have to kind of take it as it comes, and for what it's worth. Anyway, I got thrown off. I got a message coming here. I'm trying to read that while I'm thinking. So once you start hitting that late October, early November, these places you want to key in on again. One of the big things I like to key on is I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, I've got this path here now. I've got this trail that this buck is running. Now comes spring of the year. If I have time to get up north and I want to do some scouting, I want to go back through and I want to look at this route and I want to check this out. And one thing I'd like to do is I want to look at these rubs that this buck is making. And rubs are like a fingerprint. A buck will pick out a particular tree that he really likes, a particular size of tree he really likes, and he seems to kind of stick to those. And so, and he also has a particular rack that rubs a tree a certain way. Some will have real big stickers on them. Some will be really smooth racks. Some of them want to rub with one part of their rack and where it's smooth, and others will really gouge a tree hard. But each one is kind of like a fingerprint. So study those rubs, and when you see his rub somewhere else, you'll recognize it then, and you'll be able to tell it that's the same buck, and that's kind of key. So now spring of the year comes and I'm up north and I'm doing some scouting, and I go back in and I run this route back through again. And again, guys, if you got any questions, go ahead and fire them up. I'm going to kind of keep trying to watch for that. But anyway, then I'd start looking around. I found one spot where this deer bedded, but I know that that isn't the only spot he beds. And so I want to learn a little bit more about this deer. Now, I'm going to kind of just use my imagination from what I've learned in tracking in the past. And oh, I lost my pointer here. I'm going to assume that, again, right here, you see there's another beaver dam right here. Now, if this buck is hanging here and he's got a bed right here, I would have to believe that he's going to want to come up into this section of woods at some point in time. Now, he might come back along this old trail here and follow that edge and whip around that corner and come in there. He might not. He might just choose to cut right through here. Again, they like those edges, and then there's a beaver dam there. And he might come into here and he might just take this edge one way, or he might take this edge another way. Another thing too, all these little points that they like to bed in. I wouldn't be surprised to find a buck bed right here. You wouldn't be surprised a bit. Okay, let's say that happens. Let's say I run this through here in my spring scouting. I'm going to mark this up a little bit now. Let's say I find another rub right in here. And let's say I continue on to that island and I go around and all of a sudden I find another rub right in here. And then another rub maybe up in here somewhere. And lo and behold, off of this point over here, I find a bed. Okay, now, if these rubs are consistent with the other rubs, if these rubs here are consistent with these other rubs, and it looks like the same buck, and there's another bed right there, chances are, okay, now we found two of his beds. Now we got this one and we got this one. Now, again, I'm going to use my imagination and what I've learned in tracking in the past and deer behavior. This buck is probably going to continue along on this path along this creek, along this edge. It loves edges or this edge here. So I'm going to scout those edges. I'm going to be looking at those edges for possible other beds, for other rubs. I want to try to figure out where this deer goes. This deer, wherever he goes, he's going to go there again and again and again. Okay, I see a question. Sorry, Dave. How can you identify beaver dams on maps? They stick out. I'm going to try to see if I can zoom. When I zoom, I'm going to lose my pointer. But I'm going to use my finger here. Then I'll use my arrow. You see how the water is built up here? The water is held way back, and then the water comes out of there as a creek. That's going to be a beaver dam. And my red mark in there kind of makes it hard to see it. But this one here is the same thing again. You see you've got a big puddle of water, a big pond of water held back, and there's a little creek coming through. That's going to be a beaver dam. And they're pretty easy to see. Here's another one. Oh, I don't know. The comments are covering this up on my phone, but right here and or here, this one for sure, I'm pretty positive is going to be a beaver dam right down here. You see that there's a mark all the way across the creek, and then there's a water coming out. Pretty typical. So they do stand out, and once you get used to seeing them, here's another one. I got to turn this camera a little bit on this. See this here? Up here, you can see another one. I'm going to have to come in from this angle here. Let's see, right here. Like right in here is probably another beaver dam. And then if I turn that camera a little bit more, there's actually, I believe another one right here. This is probably a big beaver dam all the way across there. Now, I've never been in there to check this out. This is an area I don't even hunt or anything, but I'll bet you if you go in there, you'll find that to be true. You'll find that that's what's going on there. Okay, so let me try to get my train of thought back here again now. Okay, so now we're spring scouting, and we found out a little bit more about this deer. We went in there, we found some more rubs, we found another bed. Again, I'm going to get my pointer going here so you guys can kind of follow along. We kind of explored this area up in here too. Now we might extend all the way along this, and we might find more rubs, and that's good again, because that's going to show us where that deer travels, to kind of get an idea. And again, I'm going to start, when you're doing a lot of tracking, you start to learn these deer and their behavior, their habits, and everything, and you can really kind of guess where they're going to go. If this deer is in this area again, and he wants to go over in this area, I'm going to assume that he's going to follow the edge of the high ground, maybe something like this, along this line of travel. Now, it appears to me that there's a beaver dam right here as well. There's a little puddle of water, and then it's held back. So I think there might even be a dam there. So you got to kind of watch. That might be a very good crossing. He might come through and then go right across right there. Again, just deer behavior. This area right in here could be awesome bedding. There's a little few bigger trees. So there's a little bit higher ground, but it's swampy and it's kind of dead-ended by this swamp. That buck could be laying anywhere along off of this here. So those are places I kind of want to scout to see if there is beds in there. Any activity, any rubs, see if he is moving that. And then again, too, along this side. Oh, I think I'm getting off the page on you guys. Sorry about that. I got to watch. Along here like this, again, would be a really good line of travel for him to take. Always the edges. You're welcome, Dave. And or if he doesn't come across on this side, and look for rubs. Look for those rub lines. Oh, look for those rub lines to see if you can identify them. And basically what you're trying to do is using the knowledge that you gained, from tracking. I absolutely know this buck is going to run this. And now I know that he's a good buck, and I know his rubs, and I've identified some more rubs. And again, like when we went over this area here, we might find a few more rubs. We might find another bed over here. You start putting together this puzzle. And again, I can't, I'm going to say this a million times, but they're going to run the same route again and again and again. And knowing that is the key to having a chance to shooting one of these deer. Because you take, for example, if he does bed here, and there's a beaver dam here, and he's got to use that to come across, and let's say he even beds up in here, you just use the wind for your advantage, and you post up when you got the wind going right. You come in a fashion that's not going to cross his normal operating trail, and then you pick a vantage point and you set up bow, rifle, whatever it happens to be. You just set up, and if he happens to be there and he happens to come out, you get a chance at him. If he's moving during a rut, you get a chance at him. You know, another thing I haven't mentioned too is scrapes too, and then these bucks are going to run and open up the same scrapes almost year after year after year too, so you want to watch for them as well. Now I'm going to back up. Somebody asked me a question here and I missed it. So, are you trying to focus your efforts where the big bucks bed? Yes, Tim. The closer to home, the better the chance. The closer I stick around to where you live, Tim, the easier it is I'm going to make contact with you. If this is where, and that's a good point as well, Tim. I'm going to try to speculate. Is this his core area? Is this where this buck calls home? Is this kind of where he hangs out? It might not be. This might be on the 4-mile outskirt edge of where this buck likes to run, and he's only going to come in here once a week during the rut. If that's the case, the chances of ambushing him here go way down. But I'm going to look for those telltale signs of, is he spending a lot of time there? Does he have a lot more rubs there? Does he have scrapes? Is he, does it look like is his beds well worn? Are they used a lot? If I can kind of guess that this is kind of his home area, that's awesome. Like I say, his home core might be 4 miles away, 3 miles away. And he might push up into this area only once a week during the rut to check out does. But that's kind of where you got to use your wood sense. You got to kind of see, kind of feel it out. And you're going to be wrong, and sometimes you're going to be right. When you're right, you look like a hero, you get your buck. So, yes, I do key on where the big bucks bed. I'd love to know where they hang out. But again, I want to stress that this isn't southern Wisconsin swamps where he's going to bed here because this is the only good spot that he has to bed, and he doesn't have a whole lot of options left other than that. This buck might be one of 30 beds he has, and he might move around a lot, and so it's a little bit tougher. You're more of a needle in a haystack, but I would rather be hunting in a known area where he hangs out a lot on a trail that I know he takes than to just randomly, blindly be out in the woods hoping for a miracle to happen. So yeah, that's the key to the whole thing. And really, I guess I went through this kind of quick, so if you guys got more questions, go ahead and ask. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. When I want to, if I'm going into a season and I don't have any snow to work with, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to work off that historical data. Basically kind of to fill in the blanks here a little bit more. Let's do this. Let's do the pretend thing here. Let's pretend that he does walk this. We found rubs. Let's say we found some activity. And let's say he does have a bed here. Let's fill in those blanks. Let's say sometimes he takes this trail here. Let's say he does cut across over here and he comes up in and he takes this. This is what you want to know. These are the things that you want to know. Does he ever drop? Do you see any rubs coming down this way? Does he follow this edge of the creek? Or have you seen rubs in here more along this other transition line along here? Maybe he runs this transition line. those are the things you want to kind of fill in. You know, if you see his tracks in the mud, try to identify if that track is identifiable. Does he have one toe longer than the other on the front right, or you know, back left, or whatever the case may be? Can I see that track again? Will I know that deer? And map these things out. And you know, and by all means, you know, get a map like this. I mean, you're gonna have the historical data from tracking. I'm assuming that you would be smart enough to track that when you're following them, but then put it on a map and fill it in. Hell, you could even go in and drop some trail cameras in. You know, I'd be a little cautious about moving in right on top of where he's bedding, or where you might want to hunt him. I don't know if I'd want to drop a camera where you want to hunt him or where he's bedding, but somewhere else along his trails. You know, let's say, and I don't do a lot of trail cameras, so I can't speak from a whole lot of experience. I'm just starting to get involved with it. But if I did have trail cameras, I would not get onto this little island here. I'd leave this island alone, because that's kind of a quiet little spot. I want to leave him be happy there. Again, you know, if there's a bedding area here, if he's bedding there, I wouldn't really want to throw a camera in there. But I wouldn't be afraid of coming in up above here like this and dropping a trail camera up over here somewhere. Or, you know, one back down along here. You see there's a little pond a little ways further down here. You know, along the edge of this pond, maybe drop a trail camera in there. You know, and again, maybe way on this end of things, if he doesn't have a bed over here, you know, maybe drop a trail camera in here. Maybe you get a look at the guy, see what he looks like. That'd be kind of awesome. You know, I don't do the trail cameras, so that's kind of new to me. But I'm going to start doing that more and more now. Yeah, I don't know, or along this line, you know, if you see something that looks like he might be traveling that area, get a camera in there. But I would caution against putting it where you want to hunt him. Don't let him know he's there. And all you want to know, basically all that trail camera is going to do for you is letting you know that deer is still alive and he's still running that area. And if he's still alive and he's still running that area, he's going to continue to run the same trails. So you don't have to press in on him or pressure him in order to throw cameras at him. Another thing you could do too is by knowing these routes when you come in, make sure that wind is in your favor. You know where he might be bedding, or you know which way he's traveling, or where he travels. You know, try to stay off of those trails and try to keep that wind in your favor. And if you do that, you can hunt these pre-rut or rut. You can hunt the same stand 7 days in a row. I know a lot of people believe that one and done and move on or whatever, but if you hunt them right, there's no reason why not. There's no reason that you can't. You know, and then again, if you're getting into the rut, another thing too that I'd like to point out is look for doe sign too. When you're out here scouting this whole area out here, look for does. Are there does? You know, are there does out in this area over here? It looks like there's some cut was going on over here or something. Are there does working this cut over here? Are the does bedding? You know, are the does bedding off over along here? You know, are they hitting these little islands out there or here? You know, I mean, is there any doe bedding along this side of the creek or anything? There's another key that you might want to look for too, because where the does are, that's where he's going to be traveling. He's going to be traveling through there looking for those does as well. So, you know, those are all the kind of things that I do if I don't have snow on the ground. And I like to see too, you know, you don't even need, see, I didn't run trail cameras for years. I don't really need to. I'd get in there and see if he opened up them scrapes, if he opened up them rubs again, if he hit them same rubs he did the year before. I don't need a camera to tell me that he's still alive and still in there. If there's tracks in the mud, you know, I might walk in and check out that beaver dam to see if there's any activity at the crossing. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there messing around too much, but I wouldn't be afraid to walk in and check for a track to see if there's anything coming across. So, anyway, we got another question here now. How often I'm missing it. I don't know how to make this come up. Oh boy. I'm going to back up here. Okay, how often do you see local bucks using the same route? I don't understand the question. Many bucks might use the same route. If it's the easiest, safest way through the area, a route might get a lot of activity from a lot of different bucks. The one thing I do see a lot of, though, is each buck tends to set up his own routes. And you find that chink in his armor along his route. And when you take that deer out, or if that deer disappears, a lot of times those routes go cold. But like a beaver crossing, that could be hot forever. I mean, that's always going to be a perennial good spot. Any decent buck, any buck coming through there, does and fawns coming through, they're going to cross those areas. But let's say that this particular buck likes this route here. He runs this route here. Once you take that buck out, or once he's dead, another buck may not run that route again. So that's why you got to kind of see if there's any activity, if he's still around, to see if he's still using it. I find that so often that these big old bucks, they got their own ways through the land, and once they're gone, those routes go cold. So it's like they each decide where they want to go. Okay, so you'd love hearing of Big Woods perspective. Anything or everything is different in the Big Woods, that's for sure. Okay, and I caught that one. Okay, it says section of the route, not the entire loop. That's only a partial question, Ryan. Did I miss something? Oh, how often do you see the local bucks using the same section of the route, not the entire loop? Again, Ryan, if it's a bucks love to run edges, and edges are really safe travel areas for them and easy travel areas for them. And if that's a good edge, and there's multiple bucks in that area, there's a good chance that multiple bucks will be using that. I can't prove this theory, but I have a theory that when you start to see big rubs pop up, especially really like bigger trees that are really worked hard, those are overlapping areas of multiple decent bucks, or at least bucks that can compete with each other. I see that a lot, and it seems like wherever I find, and some maybe would call it a signpost rub even, but the difference, I guess, signpost is year after year after year, whereas I see these overlapping areas, I see a big rub pop up somewhere. I'm pretty sure that means that there's competition and there's aggression going on there, and that those bucks are working that tree hard, and they'll pick a big tree and work it up pretty good. So I can't prove that. I want to prove that with cameras at some point, and hopefully I'll be able to do that in the next couple seasons here, if I can find some good examples of that and get some cameras on those spots. But I hope I'm answering that question for you. See here, it says overlap of the routes. Again, they all kind of make their own way through the woods, and they all kind of make their own ways that they want to go, and a lot of times there's going to be overlap. A lot of times there's going to be those spots because they're just good travel corridors. So I hope I'm catching what you're asking there. I hope I'm answering that all right. But that's kind of it in a nutshell, gentlemen. I'm going to look at my notes here quick and see if there's anything I kind of wanted to hit. Again, they use these they use the same patterns again and again and again. So, okay. I'm reading and thinking and trying to do this all at once, guys. So I'm sorry. Again, I'm going to go through my notes and just kind of stress your a rut pattern. This is a rut pattern. If you're going up to northern Wisconsin or wherever you go, wherever in the north, it may be different if you go before the rut. And in the areas that I hunt, I would say the rut starts, or you might want to start looking at these trails late October, last week of October on. Before then, it's a little bit different ball game. Then you got to try to find out where that particular buck is hanging around. If you do find out where he's hanging around, he probably ain't going to move a whole lot, and you have a little bit better chance at him if you can find him pre-rut. But that can be a needle in a haystack. And I don't get a lot up north to do a lot of earlier hunting, so I don't really have a whole lot of expertise in that area. Again, get out there in the spring and try to put the puzzle together more off of what you learned from your tracking. Pick your stand sites. When you're doing your spring scouting, if you're picking this thing apart and you're getting an idea, that wouldn't be a bad idea to bring your milkweed in and let a little bit go. Pick out a tree somewhere and make sure that you got a tree that you can get into quietly and that it's going to work, and that you have shooting lanes that you can actually make shots to these trails. In the spring it'd be a good time to clear out a couple of these spots and be ready in case you don't have snow and you want to pop up a stand or do some earlier archery hunting or whatever. But anyway, that's it in a nutshell. That's kind of how I approach it, and I'm just going to kind of hang in here for a few more minutes, and if you guys got any more questions. Okay, Dave, I don't know if you guys can see the comments other guys are making. I don't know enough about this, but Dave said my best big wood spot is where multiple edges and different types of habitat converge. I've killed my biggest bucks all with a half mile of one another. Absolutely, Dave, and I wouldn't be one bit surprised if those spots where you're killing those deer, you have a really good signpost rub in that area too, or a really dandy rub or a scrape that opens up every year. When you get these spots where you have like spokes on a wheel type thing, where you've got multiple things coming together, multiple edges. That's where you see these signpost rubs. A lot of times these signpost rubs are along creeks, and then all of a sudden there's some land break coming up to the creeks which funnel deer in. I don't know who it was, but somebody was talking to me not too long ago and made that comment about coming out to a creek. And every time I walk that piece of land, I always come out to the creek to the same spot. Well, and that's where you're going to find that signpost rub, because the deer do too. The deer know that land like you knew, and they walk it the same way you do, and they know that it's easy going. So they get funneled right into those spots, and then so do the does and so do the bucks, and that's where you see that activity. Okay, Corey asked, do you ever have any luck finding sheds in the spring to use as clues as to where a buck is living? Corey, if I've found 3 or 4 sheds in my entire life. If I lived off of sheds, I'd starve. It's tough, and here's another thing too. Most of these bucks are migrating for the winter. They're moving to wintering areas. So where they're shedding their antlers isn't even where I would probably be hunting that deer anyway. And here's another thing too. As long as we're talking about that, I'm going to mention something. In the old days in the north, these deer used to migrate to what they called wintering areas. There would be some cedar swamp somewhere, and deer would come from 15 miles away and move into the cedar swamp and hang out. Deer have changed. With men being up there, with men having yards and shrubs and gardens and trees and feeding deer and bird feeders and activity around the lakes. The new wintering area for deer is cities, the edges of cities, and around the lakes where there's permanent residents. You won't believe how many deer now are moving into areas around lakes, near cities. They're pushing into areas not what you would consider the old normal wintering areas anymore. Times have changed. Tim says, I've used GPS for years to mark every run, rub, scrape. Oh, scrolling on me now. I have codes for each and by the year, and I recommend others do the same. They tell a story. You bet, Tim, no doubt. Yeah, you're doing the right thing. How far north are you in Wisconsin? Ron, I hunt up Ashland, Bayfield, up north, up there, Iron. That kind of country is where I am. I live in central Wisconsin, unfortunately, so I don't get up there as much as I like. But that's the area I hunt. But I hunt from one end of the state as well, and I also hunt Michigan and Minnesota as well too. So, and the things that I'm telling you here are pretty typical of all those areas. Even different types of terrain and different types of situations. The kind of the theory that I'm giving here is going to work all those areas. Can you tell how big the buck is from just looking at a rubber scrape? No. Track size is going to tell me if he's a good buck, if he's a mature buck, and how hard he presses into the ground is going to tell me if he's got good body weight to him, if he's got good size to him. I was just showing an example yesterday of two little whippy trees that were all rubbed up real hard, all tore up and everything, and they were no bigger around than a half-inch diameter. They were both made by a 140-inch 8-pointer that I killed. And I took those pictures while I was tracking them, and I ended up shooting that deer. So, a real big tree beat to hell is a good thing because there's probably a big buck. Most likely a really big buck if it's all gored and gouged up. But do not, don't walk away from little trees that get tore up either, because the big bucks will tear little trees up as well. And I've heard that they only do that when the velvet comes off, and they do the whippy stuff so they can get the velvet off, and that's not true, because the example I was just telling you about, those pictures, that deer was taken on December 11th in the UP, and so it was almost late post-rut already, so I know that he wasn't trying to get velvet off. So they do rub the small stuff, and I see that again and again when I'm following them. But again, to really tell how big a buck is, I would say go by the track. You go by the track. See how hard he's pressing in. When you get good at following tracks and learning tracks, you'll see how much a buck that's going to dress out at over 200 will press into the ground compared to one that's 180 or 160. There are differences, and you can tell. Okay, Ron asked, I'd be curious, as I'm in northern Minnesota and wonder if your conditions are similar to mine. Yes, very much so. I hunt up by the Boundary Waters, Ron, so what I'm telling you today it works up there too. It's the same exact thing. Deer are nomads in big country. I'm not going to agree with that statement. They know where they're going. They know what they're doing. Deer do move around a lot. I'll agree with you there. I'll absolutely agree. Those bucks might be here one week and they might be over there next week, but they might be a month later. They might be 3 miles over doing something, but they're doing it for a purpose. And it's just like, maybe I'm misunderstanding your term nomad. They have a purpose. The one thing that I've learned about big bucks over the years is they do everything with a purpose. If they move over 2 or 3 miles, it's because there's a food source coming in that they're familiar with from past years, and they go over there to take advantage of that. They may move over 6 miles to an area where they'll hit when it's rutting. And the thing to remember about that, Tim, is those deer, and they've proven this with radio collars. Those deer will do the same thing year after year after year after year. So if you see a big buck in an area during the rut chasing does around and he doesn't get killed, he'll be back in that area next year at that time. So, and you can put that in the bank. That they've proven with radio collaring, and I believe that to be true with what I see in the woods as well. So they do move around a lot. I agree with you there. But I don't know if I like the word nomadic, because I think there's purpose in everything they do. And the older they get, the more purpose they seem to have. They seem to really, they don't waste any time for anything on anything. So I don't know if that was the same thing you were thinking, but that's my take on it. Ryan says, we have tons of stone walls in Vermont and and or New Hampshire and Vermont, you have them and or use them like stream-defined crossings? No, we don't have any stone walls at all. And I guess it depends on the size of the stone wall and how much of a barrier it really causes the deer. We have fences in areas, and I know that if you tie the wire down in an area on a fence, the deer learn that wire is a little bit lower and they'll cross there. So that's one thing maybe to key on when you're looking at your walls. I don't know how much of a barrier they really provide, but if there's a spot in that wall where it's lower and it's easier for the deer to get through, they'll walk along it a ways and then they know where those spots are. So without knowing much more about your stone walls, I can't really answer that any more than that, I guess. Okay, and Tim said, yeah, that was my point. I don't know how far I'm getting behind. There might be a lot here to go through. Okay, what are the factors of deer? Ron said, what are the factors of deer moving back into their normal habitat from their winter grounds? It's -15 now, wondering when in the spring they'll start moving back into normal range. That I can't tell you. I don't know, Ron. I don't know enough about the biology of those deer. I would imagine as soon as the snow gets melts enough that they can move quite well. I know in central Wisconsin here, I see that. When the snow starts melting and they start getting close to bare ground where they can start eating again like they normally do, I start to see movements like that. A lot of deer moving through an area as they go out to, like in this particular area I'm referring to, there's people that, a few people that are putting in a lot of food plots, and it draws those deer from miles around for the winter, and they'll stay there until that snow starts to get down, and then when it does and they can move around easy and everything starts to green up, then it's a mass exodus. It's amazing. There could be 200-300 deer in there, and they just spread out for miles after that. So as far as when they're going to move, I would say based upon the snow depth more than anything. Tim asks here, or says, I find where I am at, you have to keep up with them. But I love to hear what you have to be there at the same time. That's good. Oh, that you have to be there at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, again, Tim, think of it in those terms. You might start to notice that now that I point that out. They're very patternable. Northern Ashland County, Clam Lake, back in the 70s, they did a university study and they radio collared a bunch of bucks. And the gist of the study in the end, the guy that did the study said, every buck does something different, but every buck holds his pattern year after year unless something really drastically changes. So whatever that deer decides he's going to do, he does it year after year after year as long as he's alive. So I think the radio collar study is really good data to work with. Okay, I hope I answered that for you, Tim, or whatever. I hope I covered that well enough. Dave asked, Todd, how do the bucks relate to bait piles, and how do you go about hunting them? Good question, Dave. Wisconsin, it's a pain in the butt. These bucks they don't usually hit the bait. They go to the bait. You think of a bait pile as a scrape, as the old-fashioned scrape. The bait pile attracts the does. The bucks come to check on the does, so they go by the baits. Most of the time, these bucks don't even go to the baits. They walk past them. Once in a while, they'll take a bite, but not too often. Usually, they walk right by the bait and they keep right on it going. Their goal is to just see if there's a doe and heat in the area, and they move right on through. And how do I go about hunting them? It sucks. Quite honestly, Dave, I can't put it any other way. If I'm again, if I know his routes, I'm still going to play the same rules. But I will say one thing: nothing will switch a buck's pattern like bait piles changing, because what happens is it shifts the does around. So unfortunately, that can make it a mess. But usually, a lot of these hunters go back year after year and bait the same spots year after year. And if somebody ain't in there, somebody else puts a bait in there. So that kind of stays the same. And I've noticed even in Wisconsin, even with all the bait and everything, these bucks run the same routes again and again and again. So again, if I can run his routes and I know kind of where he calls home, that's where I would spend a majority of my time on bare ground, and hope for the best. But the bait is no fun. Not if you're a tracker or a stand hunter. It says Glenn Bombardier is watching. Are you the Bombardiers from the snowmobiles? Corey asked, when you're out looking for tracks to pick up and follow during hunting season, do you get out and walk looking for fresh tracks, or driving roads and logging roads to cover more area quicker to find a big track to follow? Quite honestly, because I'm getting to be an old fart already, I drive a lot. But I will say, a lot of big bucks are road weary. So if you know an area that perennially holds big bucks, or you have an area that held a big buck years prior, and you know the edges that they're running, I wouldn't be afraid to walk in a quarter mile, half a mile to go check that edge to see if he came through on fresh snow. That'd be a very good tactic to use, or just cutting new country. I've killed bucks doing that tracking, just jumping in and just cutting across the open country. Get lucky, you find a good track, and you take them and you get them. So, and sometimes I do, if I'm driving around a lot and I'm not having a lot of success finding a track, sometimes I like to just get out and again get my old carcass moving again. If I sit for 3-4 days and don't get out and walk, it's hell to try to make on a 5-mile day. It's hell getting old, guys. It says, Ron, are you still considering doing an on-site clinic in northern Minnesota? If so, what time of year? I definitely would, Ron. Yeah, I'm kind of toning in on how I want to do things and everything for his school, and I'll take the show on the road. I don't have a problem doing that. I won't travel up for one person, but if we can get a bunch of guys together interested, I'll definitely come up. I put together a really nice PowerPoint presentation covering a lot of information, and that I got on my laptop, so I can travel with that. If we got a TV to plug it into, it'd be great. If not, we'll all just huddle around the laptop and go over it, and and then we can hit the woods and look for tracks. The hardest part about the school is the deer don't always cooperate with me, and the weather doesn't always cooperate with me. And when we go out looking for tracks and I try to show examples, we take what we get that day. That's about all we can do. Yesterday I held a class, and I didn't get a chance to put anything on my site about it yet, but all the while I'm giving my presentation, it opens up and snows like crazy. So when we went out looking, we did find tracks, but we didn't find anything big enough to really mess with to follow. So it was kind of a bummer, but that's part of the game. And really, I want to be able to show you guys things on the ground, but your learning is going to come when you go out and hit the ground on your own. And every track you take, you're going to get a little bit better. I've been doing it for 12 years now, and I feel like I'm starting to get to where I know what I'm doing. There's always more to learn. I mean, you can always get better at it. So I envy these trackers out in Africa that go on dirt, and there's multiple species running around, and these guys can look at these tracks in the sand and they know what they are, and they know how old they are. I mean, those guys are incredible. So I know I have a long way to go. I'll never get that good. But I definitely would come. Yeah, I'll travel. If there's enough guys interested, I'll definitely do that. If I wanted to hunt northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, or some of your areas, do you guide? I've never considered guiding, and I have to have a guide license in order to hunt. it's not beyond the stretch of me saying, yeah, come along and go hunting with me. I mean, I would be more along those lines. Maybe teach a class, so you could pay me a fee for that, and in the meantime, you can spend some time hunting with me. Tim, if somebody would have over the years really chummed up with me, that loves to sit a lot, that really loves to sit, they would have a bigger trophy wall than me, because I find so many awesome spots when I'm out tracking, and I've tried to put guys on some spots, and a lot of times these guys they're stubborn. They want to hunt where they hunt, or they don't want to go very far off the road, or whatever the case may be. I've got spots that are just incredible to hunt, and I just never sit them because I'm not much of a sitter. I don't care to sit. So I've tried to pawn my best spots off on people, and they don't even want them sometimes. I have to laugh. But, maybe we could do something together sometime, Tim. That's a possibility. Private message me. Let me know where you're at. Let's get to know each other a little bit. Maybe we can work something out sometime down the road here. I think anything's possible. Glenn Bombardier, unfortunately not. You're not with the snowmobiles. Oh, bummer, huh? Okay. Okay, Ryan says, thanks a lot. You're very welcome, Ryan. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And I hope, this seemed like it was going really well. So, there were some topics that guys asked me about too. Maybe we can bump on some of those topics, go back a little bit in history here. I got to go back and do that. Maybe we can do this once a week or something even, maybe. It's a little hard to talk to my cell phone, but it's working so far. How big of a section without private do you look for before you start tracking, Jeff? Very good question. Jeff, I'll track a deer through a quarter mile, a 40. If there's a big track going into a 40, I'll track him into it. I don't know where he is. He could be 4 miles away. He could be 8 miles away. He might be 250 yards away. If I find a good track, I'm not afraid to take him. That's one thing I hear so many times from people is, I don't have the big country like you have. I can't travel to go hunt there, and I can't do this, I can't do that. I hunt a 40-acre plot. I'll give you a good example, Jeff. Let's say you own a 40 acres. Let's say you're going to go out and hunt in the morning, and you had fresh snow that night, and you see this whopper track coming into your piece. First of all, you have the advantage. You know your land. You know where that buck is going to probably bed if he goes in there. If he stays, you know where he's probably going to bed. Second thing you can do, it's only a 40. Walk around the perimeter, see if he came out. If you walk the perimeter and he doesn't come out, now you know he's in there, and you got a trail leading you right exactly to him. Now, let's say you've got 6 more hours left in the day. Don't track him like I would normally track. Track them with a death crawl. Get in on that track and slide forward inch by inch throughout the day. If it takes you 6 hours to get through your 40, and just rip that woods apart with your eyes. You got them if you just play your cards right. If the wind is in your favor, that's another thing too you want to watch. But yeah, I don't let the size of the land dictate whether or not I take a track. I take tracks sometimes that are leading right toward private, and if they hit the private, I turn around and go home. We look for another track. So, don't think size too much. Don't worry about that. And another thing I've learned too, as we're talking about this, I do some tracking in central Wisconsin too, where the land is broke up a lot more. And what I'm finding is a lot of these smaller pieces, it seems like as though the bucks know they're pressured harder, so they don't move as much. So you don't have to track them 4, 5, 6 miles to catch up with them. A lot of times these deer aren't that far. They don't really go that far. It seems like the more the land is broke up as far as ownership goes, the shorter the distance they seem to travel. And I think it's because of safety issues. And I can't prove that, but that's kind of my thought process on it. So whatever size land you have to work with, if you've got a track, take it. I've killed a bunch of them within a half a mile. So, don't be afraid to take a track. And if you hit private, I've got Onyx now, and I love that because I know exactly where the private properties are now. I love that. When I'm taking a track, I hit private, bam, I stop, I say good enough, and I go home. No big deal. But I know I'm there then, and I know I can't get in trouble. And it's a peace of mind knowing that you know that if you can keep going yet another quarter mile, or if you have to stop. You might even make the choice with Onyx. You might circle that 40 and see if he came out the other side. You can legally walk around the property and check the other side of it, if as long as you have access. Maybe he walked right on through that 40. You pick him up on the other side and keep going. So again, don't let the size of the land, dictate whether or not you decide to take track. Ron says, put me on a good spot and I'll hunt it. Where were you before? Yep. There's been a lot of good ones. I know a funnel right now up in northern Minnesota that it's one of the best in the whole world. And this year I went back and checked it out, and sure enough, a big buck came through there again. The one time I walked back in there to check it out. It's a half a mile. As close as you can get to it is a half a mile if you know how to get in there. And there's nobody in there hunting it. Nobody. And there's spots, and you find them by tracking. That's the best way to find these spots. Dave said, I love to share a camp with you in northern Wisconsin during the rut. Hey, I'm always accessible, guys. That's the one thing I want you guys to know. I'm always accessible. You can always message me. Always have availability with my phone and whatever. If somebody's in the area and they want to get together with me, I'm just going to pray that whoever, if people hang out with me, they're not going to try to overrun my spots or bring a bunch of guys in on me or whatever the case may be. If you do, you do. There's nothing I can do about it. But I hope that as this thing builds, I hope I never lose that ability to be accessible to everybody. So you guys, you can contact me. Don't be afraid to get a hold of me. I don't bite too much. My chocolate lab licks a lot, but she don't bite either. Tim says the guys from the Adirondack trackers adhere to the philosophy that if you don't have to take a track, that you don't have to take a track if you think the track is too small. You personally, things skipped over here. You personally skip tracks like that or follow all. The simple answer to that, Tim, is a little track is going to get mixed up with other little tracks, and you're not going to know which little track is your track and which little track is the other guy's track. So I stick to big tracks. That way I can sort it out once it runs into other deer. Most snow conditions are not these perfect days where everything is crisp, like 3 inches of soft snow that they leave a perfect impression where you can see that the right toe is always hooking. Most of the time it's puffy, fluffy, it falls back in. You want a big track. You want to take a big track, the one that you know you can stay with. So I don't follow small tracks just for that reason. It's just too much of a mess. Chances are you'd end up on the wrong track anyway within the first quarter mile. You'll be jumping tracks probably all day long if you take little tracks. So if there's a little track buck out there with a monster rack on him, he's probably going to get away from me. And I've also heard it said that a lot of these really big-bodied deer have smaller racks, which is fine with me. If I can shoot a really big slob 5-year-old and he scores 120, that's good enough for me. I'm happy. I'll throw a tag on him with a big smile on my face. Ron says, I live in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, west of Duluth, about 75 miles west. 75 miles. Yeah, you're okay. If you're referring to getting together, like a school or whatever, we just need to get some guys. And the other guys that are reading this, if you other guys are in that zone anywhere, where we can get some guys together. I have to travel up if there's some guys from central Wisconsin area or along the way going up there that want to jump a ride with me as well. That could happen too. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll throw that around. Maybe make another post on my Facebook page, Ron, requesting that. See if there's anybody else interested. Thanks for the invite, Ron. Okay. Glenn says, I'm used to tracking in the Northeast where a good track is 3 inches wide. What's the norm for a good track in Wisconsin? Something, it's got to be about the width of a case, the shell case of a 30-06. Anything bigger than that is a pretty good track. I would have to measure that shell to tell you exactly how wide that is. One thing I have noticed, though, Glenn, is when I go up to northern Minnesota, the deer tracks are bigger there. And when I come to Wisconsin, they're not quite as big as Minnesota. And then when I go up into the UP, they're smaller yet. And I don't know why that is, but I just see that as a pattern. So the UP is almost the toughest out of them all because it's hard to pick a good track out of that. Just because they just don't. I've just never seen any really monsters up in the UP. I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't run across them, on average at least. Dave asked, "What's your impression of deer population in the Northwoods?" I can only speak for the areas that I hunt. Ashland County is bouncing back really, really, really good. Other than that, I really don't know. I haven't been. It's been a few years since I've been over Oneida, Vilas. On the, I was over on the more of the east end of Oneida, Vilas over there a few years back. There were deer, but not a lot of them. I do know that I have a cabin up in the Minocqua area, west of Minocqua, about 17 miles west. That area is almost void of deer. It's horrible over there. So it depends on where you're at. There are places that are bouncing back really well. I personally think in the area that I'm hunting up in Ashland County, they could be giving out doe tags already. There's definitely numbers, a lot of good numbers up there. So it's a positive. I think we need to hold the carrying capacity a little high just because of the wolves and the hard winters we have at times. We don't want to go through what we just went through with waiting years for them to bounce back. But I think overall, I think the numbers are coming back. Okay, Tim says the width of a 30-06 or bigger is good here in the Northeast as well. Yeah, and just again, Tim, just to give you a body size idea, we just aren't hitting the real big ones anymore around here. I don't know what the heck's the problem is. Even Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP where I'm hunting anymore, you get post rut. You get a deer that weighs 180 pounds post rut after he's run down. That's a good buck. If he breaks 200, that's a dandy. Northern Minnesota was known for those 250 class dressed bucks. But you're just not seeing them. I don't know what the issue is. I wish I knew what was causing that. And I wish I knew what it took to solve that problem. And again, overall, I think Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, the age class is taking a hit. The deer are coming back, but the age class just isn't there anymore. It's getting harder and harder to find a deer that's 5-6 years old. Okay, I think I'm scrolled through to the end. Okay, it says, Tim says, I have found Adirondack bucks to be physically a little smaller than New Hampshire or Maine. Oh, no, it's scrolled on me. But they can be big. They can get big. Same story is with Vermont. Typically, when the size gets smaller, that means your population is up. I don't know. Our population has been down, and our bucks we haven't been getting. The size hasn't been coming back. I'm not sure exactly what's happening, Tim. It's a little actually confusing to me. The wolves, northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan, really blossomed, and I'm wondering if the wolf population and the pressure applied by the wolves has something to do with that. I'm wondering if the wolves are targeting these older bucks that are, 5, 6, 7 years old that are really wore down from the rut. If they aren't easier targets for the wolves or something. I mean, that's purely speculation. I have no idea. It's baffling to me why the numbers of mature bucks are dropping. Whatever it is, I hope the trend switches around. Ron says, any suggestions, tips for tracking deer without snow? No. You can, you take a deer that is a big heavy buck, and he'll cut in as he's walking. And if you got the good dewy ground or soft ground or whatever, he'll cut in. You can follow him. But the problem is I'm usually rut hunting, and these bucks travel miles and miles and miles, and there's just no way that you could. I mean, you can pick apart the track and maybe take them, a half a mile in a day's time or something. And if you got lucky and you only went a half a mile, you might be able to pick them out. You might be able to use a little intuitiveness as well, and look ahead at your maps and see where he might travel, and try to do that as well. All those things could work, but the bottom line is they travel so much during the rut that you can't stay with them on bare ground long enough to ever catch them that way. So I really don't mess around with it very much. I pay attention to tracks when they're dug in really good because it tells me there's a really heavy deer in that area. But as far as trying to follow them any distance, no. I've never had, never found that to be a method. Hi, Nick. Everybody's got to say hi to Nick. He helped me get this set up today. I was trying to get this set up and I was having some issues, so my son Nick over in Michigan helped me work through some of the issues. So thanks, Nick. Hey, Chad, how you doing? I guess that's kind of it. Unless you guys got some more questions here, we'll wrap this thing up. It sounded like it went over pretty good, so we'll try to do this again. I'm going to go back through there was some, I asked if you guys there some topics you wanted to cover. I'll go back through those again and look those over again, and maybe we'll pick one of those off of that list and talk about them a little bit more. Maybe we'll do this once a week or so, and it'd be kind of fun to do that. So we'll just take it from there. Get back on the Facebook page for me, and give me some feedback on this. What you guys think? What you thought of it? What you'd want to see? Any feedback helps me out a lot. Quite honestly, I kind of feel kind of lonely out there sometimes. So I'd love to see you guys get more input. I'd like to see more input from you guys, even if you got tracking stories or things that whatever. If you guys can contribute, that'd be great, because I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself sometimes. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys all a lot. We're up to 205, I think, members right now. That's fantastic. I know that's tiny compared to a lot of things out there, but we got 205 really good guys, so that's awesome. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to let you guys go and so you can enjoy your Friday evening. And like I said, get back on the Facebook page and let me know what you think of all this, and steer me in the right direction. So you guys have a great weekend.